discussion followed by Q&A. It is going to be a delight to have Erin Shaw to ourselves during this time. Um, my wife and I have been going to church here for years, and every Sunday morning we get to enjoy this painting, and sometimes we hear people in their mind going, what does that have to do with church? Is that liturgical art? And we've always thought, my wife especially, we need to find out where Erin Shaw is and see if she'll come back and tell everybody here about her art. And lo and behold, she was here for the Painters, Prophets and Poets Conference, and we go, we have got to see if she will do this. And she said she would. And this is great. People, we have two audiences here. Poets and Prophets, you know about it from yesterday. We have City Press people who didn't hear that. So let me introduce you again. Erin is a daughter of Oklahoma, a daughter of the land. She is Chickasha and Choctaw. That informs part of who she is. Big element in her art is kind of the tension between Native American and Western. There's an element of the trickster and a different perspective of reality, not reality, contextual reality, and that's part of her art as well. Oh, she's also a visual artist. She graduated from Baylor with a BFA and from Oklahoma with an MFA. She she's taught grade school art to grade school kids, art to high school, and most recently she was a professor at John Brown University in Siloam Springs, Arkansas for about 5 years. I was thinking yesterday that Hannah did the two truths and a lie, and if I get something wrong, that's the lie. About a couple of years ago, she left JBU, came here as part of Flourish. It's a position intern, artist in resident. I would have known that once he told me. Artist in resident with Flourish, and I understand that is a great place for now. But what is significant to me is that about 10 years ago, she connected with Doug Servan, who was our church planter, our church planting pastor, and we enticed her to be kind of an artist in resident for 3 years. Gave her a studio area up on the 3rd floor in the annex and let her go wild. And it's great. And part of the fruit for us has been this beautiful art, big ideas. There are other places in the building, like right up here in the balcony. When we're done, stand up and look back there. There's 2 pieces. In the coffee bar on the other side, looking up this way, there's 2 pieces. She just saw one in the room back behind here. Downstairs, right about there, is a triptych with a lot of kids' art on it. And I don't know, there may be other stuff around here. So, yeah, what? We're not going to invite people to walk up to the West Tower. But afterwards, if you want to wander around, once Erin has explained what's going on, and what's going on is pretty exciting. Let's see. Indian living in the West, a Western world, a Christian, and the tension of that, a very curious person, always questioning, and a good sense of humor. What'd they leave out? Help me welcome Erin Shaw.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I probably don't need it, to be honest, but well, it's such a delight to be here and kind of surprising feeling. It feels a little bit emotional. And so I just think I'm going to let that happen. One of the things that is so interesting about being an artist is that you don't always know what you've done. You don't always know what you're doing. And I think you have like a lot of choices about the way you go about living your life. So I have a lot of choices. But I've always really wanted to engage with my process in a way where I like make room for what I don't know. It feels like it's much more mirroring the way our life is. And also I think it makes room for something much bigger than myself. And so I find this a lot. It's really fascinating. It's like when you make something, you really don't always have a lot to say about it. But then, like, time passes and you have a lot more to say because you understand more. And it can actually be a pretty horrible thing because you have to talk about your art a lot and you're like, well, I know I made it, but I don't really know what I've done. But it's really interesting because when Robert reached out to me about coming and talking, I pulled up, thank God for this ability, my little Dropbox folder, and I just typed in City Pres, and I found all these blog posts that I had written, and I found the document from May 2015. So it was 10 years ago that I came and talked about the project. And so, like lots of familiar faces, you do look 10 years older. And I'm sorry about that. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. Some of you have done a great job of aging. Uh, those 10 years have held a lot for me, which is probably some of the emotion. I'm like, oh, I don't feel very organized. There's so many things I want to say. I guess I want to start by just saying how this all came about, and then a little bit about the project. And it's interesting because I was saying this to someone earlier. I think a really healthy thing as an artist is to make your work. And I have found it's really healthy for me to just like let it go and to release it and let it live in the world. One thing that I know is that art is a gift, and it's a gift that's been given to me. And so because it's a gift, I understand that in a gift economy, you receive a gift, you release a gift, you receive a gift, you release a gift, you receive a gift, you release a gift. When you release a gift, a gift is fundamentally meant to move. And when it moves, it actually does things that you have no control over, no capacity to understand, and probably you won't even know. And so it's just been like a really healthy thing for me to be able to like let it go. But then I'm like thinking about this 10 years. I'm like, you guys have been living with this for 10 years. And that makes me a little nervous because I like released it. But and the other thing I want to say, this is just coming to me, is I think a lot about beginnings in this kind of era of my life and how you can't get away from your beginnings, nor really do we need to. Our beginnings tell us a lot. And it's interesting because I feel like I was here from the beginning of City Pres, and I think that's what some of the emotion is. I met Doug because he was an RUF minister. Ben Shaw was a family member. He was an RUF minister, so Shaw and Servin, they were always spending time together at these RUF gatherings. And when I moved to Oklahoma, I moved to Oklahoma in 2009. I was living in South Florida. By the way, I love being introduced as a daughter of Oklahoma, a daughter of the land. That kind of like made me emotional. I like want to write that somewhere. I moved back in 2009 and just developed a friendship with Doug. And he was really interested in stories. I love the fact that you guys are still telling stories of rescue. That was always something I would hear him talk about. And I think that we connected on that because my research and my work is all about stories. I am fascinated with stories. I want to tell stories, but I'm also not just, I also am really interested in the way stories function and the way stories function for us individually, the way stories function us corporately, culturally, the way stories become systematized and institutionalized, the dysfunctional stories that we're living in right now. So stories have always been like my thing. And so Doug said, "Hey, do you want to make some art for City Pres?" And so I started coming to your gatherings. You weren't in this building yet, and I loved being like a participant in a community, but not necessarily like it wasn't my community, kind of. It was really, it kind of gave me a freedom that was really beautiful for me to just experience and not feel like, why are we doing this? Or, you know, and so what we decided was that we were going to make some art, and I'm real, I think I'm real interested in context, and that there are things that can only happen in the moment that we're in. And that if we can really capture that, then we're doing something valuable. And so I just was like, it would be really cool if we let the work rise up out of the community and out of the people that are at City Pres and out of their stories. And I was like, it'd be really interesting if people would like have coffee with me and tell me their stories. And I was like, I don't know. People won't do that. And Doug was like, yes, they will. And so I started like having these coffee dates with people that were a part of the community at City Pres. I remember some of those conversations really, really, really powerful stories, really painful stories. And I was so like amazed at the fact that people just opened up their life and were so vulnerable with a total stranger. And so I took those stories and I kind of got to work, and this is what happened. And one of the things that I talk a lot about as an artist is that this was in my notes from 10 years ago. I'm like, maybe this is part of what I discovered 10 years ago. You always bring what you bring to the work as an artist. You bring your talent, you bring your gift, you bring your ideas, you bring your questions, you bring your discipline. You're bringing a lot actually to it. You're bringing your experiences, but the work somehow has this amazing way of always giving you things back. And this project was actually pretty pivotal for me, and you guys may not know that. I might not have known it. And I think that I want to talk a little bit about what the work gave me and the process gave me. And then I also do want to tell you there's 30 to 40, I know this because I had my notes. I wouldn't have remembered. Images that are sort of swimming around up here. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. And so there are some like overarching ideas that I was exploring. But and I during this era, I had to go to my studio this morning and get this book. This was written in like the 1100s, and I mean not this actual one, but it is. And I had to go get it. But during the era of making this, I'm gonna read something for you out of it. I was carrying this around like full time. I don't know. I do less of that now, but I always have like 7 to 12 books on me. It's like so inefficient. Like, really, Erin? But this book was just like in my bag constantly. It's the Medieval Book of Birds. It's they call it the aviary. It's like in the bestiary tradition. So, bestiaries were these medieval books that used the life of nature and animals to teach moral and theological understanding in a time when people weren't literate. But this one is specifically dedicated to birds. I love birds. Birds are like, to me, they're messengers, and they live in this liminality, place between realms to me. But I feel like I'm really connected to the natural world and to creation. I feel like creation was God's first discourse, and there's so much wisdom and knowledge that just is at our fingertips, and it's perplexing, and so deep. And so anything that is connecting the natural world to spiritual truths has just always been really fun for me. But birds are like, oh my gosh, birds are so amazing. People are like, why do you like birds? And I'm like, why don't you? They're just amazing. So one thing about stories is that I know this is like I don't know, something I kind of discovered during graduate school. Scholars will talk about stories, the way that stories serve us individually. So we live in a world that is rapidly changing, right? The context in my life, I didn't have a iPhone until I was 30. And people that are older than me, like the world is just like a totally different, we are like on a completely different operating system. And so people talk about how much the world has changed, the external world, the world we live in, our context has rapidly changed throughout the course of time. But the internal life of man has relatively stayed the same. Our longings, our hopes, our basic needs, our wants, they're relatively not different than from when this all began. And so people will talk about how stories rise up in the gap between the internal life that we live and the external world. And stories serve us in a way to help us mediate that difference between who we are on the inside and the world that we're living in. And they help us make sense of the world. And this is why the stories that we use are so, so valuable, and why we really need to examine the stories that we're living inside of. And so sometimes when I talk about the story of Jesus, people are like, well, it's more than a story. In native thought, you wouldn't say, is that a true story? It's not a concept. Stories are inherently true. There's no separation between those things. That's what stories do. They carry truth. And so, but I think about that is the way that the story of Jesus, that's how it has functioned for me. It's functioned in that gap. It's helped me make sense of things. And it's helped me make meaning, and it's helped me like feel like I'm a part of what's happening in the world. But we also, every single person in this room is also serving a story, right? And so it's both. It's like the story serves me, I also serve the story. And one of the things that this project gave me, which I've kind of become like, it's just something I say a lot, and is the awareness that in every age, this is like my direct quote, in every age, God has called people to make the story beautiful. And one of the reasons, I'm kind of all over the place, and I'm sorry, but one of the reasons this project was so important to me, and I said like was kind of pivotal for me, is that I grew up in, mainly my context was just like the North American church. And my family told me that this is like the greatest blessing they ever spoke over me, that I was born loving God. I just always had a deep sense of my spiritual life and a connection to something that was much bigger than myself, and a real passion to pursue that and to embody that. And I had this creative gifting, and I had a lot of strong mentors in my life and voices in my life that would ultimately say to me, you're a really strong leader, and we really think you have some important work to do in the world. But we don't get how being an artist can do that. And I made, as a college graduate, a very, very deliberate decision to lay down the life of being an artist because those voices and that rationality and reason and logic, it won out. It made sense to me because I didn't know any artists. I didn't know any artists that were using their gifts to serve the story of Christ. I do think it's a different world today, but in my sort of origin story, that was it. And so I have, like, for like my 25 years, 20 years of my professional life, I've sort of tilled the ground at the intersection of art and faith, and I've watched something really beautiful happen over the course of those years. But I had often felt like I am an artist, not because of the church, but maybe despite the church, you know? And I never had really had I always felt like my gift was to serve the church and the story of Jesus, and never actually been invited in any way, and until City Pres and this project. And I think that is part of your origin story, guys. And I feel it's really important to say that. You may not even know it. And it doesn't even matter if you were a part of it. That's a part of your beginnings. And as an artist who is obviously, I am a leader. and I am perplexed and astounded and like amazed at the ways that artists are leaders, actually. You know, I'm amazed at the ways that those things can come together, and amazed at the ways that I was talked out of it and that I received that. But I feel like it's really important to say that that's a part of who you are. It's like in your DNA, and it's really important. Art is, the church needs artists, the world needs artists now more than ever. Beauty and creativity and connection is probably the greatest act of resistance in the current moment that we're in, and giving ourselves to that. And you guys made a way for me that I had never seen before. And I want to say thank you, but I also want to say that's in your DNA, so there's more work to do. I don't know what that'll look like, but and I also don't get to decide that. Well, isn't that great? I don't even get to be mad about it. I already told you that. Okay, so what do I want to read this one thing to you, because you probably have no idea. It has so much teeth to it. These two paintings that are hanging in the front, which that one's a little crooked. It needs to be straightened. Okay, so the aviarium. I love the imagery of this. It's this bird. It's a long, I don't know. There's two canvases. When they hung in the gallery, they were hanging in a gallery. They were hanging like butted up next to it, and the idea was that it was a long. It's just awkward. A long, like maybe 15 feet of blank nothing, and there's one image at the end, and it is a dove. And I'm going to read to you what this book says. The dove in question is said to have had red feet. You can also see that. I would never have done this at the time, like explain it. It's like, I don't know. An artist has an interesting relationship with what they say about their work. This dove is the church. This is just like 1100s, okay? Not even my words, but I do use a lot of research. Which had feet by which it had wandered the breadth of the whole world. The feet are the martyrs who wander the earth with as many steps as with examples of good deeds. They show themselves to those following the path of righteousness. Their feet tread the earth when, with appropriate rebukes, they censor earthly deeds and aims. Okay, this is the part that I don't know, just like, and you're reading something and like a sentence just like comes out and grabs you and wraps itself around you. But when the earth is trod, the feet are wounded by the harshness of the land. That is, the cruelty of earthly things. And thus the feet of the church are reddened, because the martyrs poured forth their own blood in the name of Christ. So that's what that image means. And you'll notice that it has propped over its back some cages that look like churches. And what do I say about that? Or maybe I don't say anything about it. And there are things inside of those cages. There are things that are bird inside of those cages. And I have a lot to say about the structure and the organization. And sometimes, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but sometimes I wonder if Jesus has left the building. And I want to say that I say that with a lot of like a passion and a love that runs through every cell of my being for the church. And that's why I say it. So that's what that image means. The true church is what we need, not all this other BS. Okay, so was that fun? Was that fun that I said that? Okay. All right, let me just talk a little bit. These are the notes that I have from 2015, which is the only reason that I would probably remember any of this. Also, I don't know what I'm gonna talk for 5 more minutes. So we wanted the work to rise out of City Pres, and I think that what I was trying to capture was okay. So I will say this a lot in my work, that I feel like I'm going into ancient times and gathering things up and bringing them into my current context, because in truth that's what I am. I'm not just like this woman living in 2025, but I'm swimming in the sea of stories and these things that have informed me, and I recontextualize those things constantly. That's what all of us do. Like every experience you have in your life is also a story, and that story is still a part of your life, but you're different now, and your context is different, and so it's still there, but it's different. It's like really amazing. Anyway, when I talk about this in relation to my cultural heritage, I use the word ancestral. Some of the ancestral images I use are actually way, way older than 2,000 years old. So I will say I go into ancestral times. I gather things up because those stories are valuable to us today, and I don't want people to forget them. So I was thinking about the Christian story and in relation to art. And so I started at what I felt people describe as the dawn of Christian art, which is the catacombs. And I was super interested in the catacombs at that time. I've probably forgotten every word I've read since then. But it says right here in my notes from 10 years ago, so I bet it's true, that the Christian catacombs are said to include 100,000 images. And that was sort of the beginning of the way that the Christian story became just visualized. And that's amazing to me. So I gathered some of those images, and they are in here. So I'm just going to point out to a few of them. The orange image is fish that are biting an anchor. That is from the 2nd or 3rd century. There's an image of Peter and Paul. I think this is going to happen chronologically, and I'm going to create a document for you guys that you can have, or like a placard or something with like a lexicon. It's back there, but it's kind of layered in the back. John the Eagle from the Book of Kells. Ugh, I love those images. The 6th to 9th century, somewhere in there. There's a pelican image from the medieval bestiary, and that's around the 12th century. St. George the Dragon Slayer. There's so many amazing depictions throughout time. The 14th century, there's a Calvin's coin, which is like the heart in the hand, and that's from the 17th century. And this white blackbird right here in the front, that is something that I was adding to. I'm going to read this to the white blackbird. I don't know. I mean, Doug named a publishing company the White Blackbird, so it must have really made a mark on him. Oh no, I thought I turned the page down, because you can see it's got some. Okay, so the blackbird is a blackbird, appropriately named, and there is said to be a blackbird that is white that comes from Greece, and It's black in every other region, but only in Greece is it found to be white. And it, I don't know if there's actually what part of this. Well, I'll read this about that bird and then tell you a little bit about the physical bird. The white blackbirds in the, I don't know what the word is, but I know it's in Greece, so I'll just say Greece. The white blackbird is allegorically a virtuous inclination, but it defines the laboring sister. So there are two sisters, Rachel and Leah. That is to say, the active life and the contemplative life. Leah defines the worker. The active life teaches us to show mercy, to instruct the immature, to have the cleanliness of chastity, to work with one's hands. And it's therefore, but then they're combining that with the life of Rachel and the life of Leah. Really struggle with that. They who live chastely in the active life are like blackbirds in Greece. In other words, rare and almost like antithetical to what it is. A blackbird is a blackbird, but this combination of the active life and the contemplative life is this rare, beautiful thing that's only found in a really unique place. Isn't that a great story? So that is, there's a lot of 30 to 40 images. One of the other things I did was I gave canvases to people in the church, and I said, find an image and paint the image. So there's some of those images swimming around in there also. And the one thing that I have this, I'm going to read this to you, but I think the thing that I really gathered the most from this, and I think this is one thing, as an artist, you're just offering things to people. It's beautiful because I can't control it and I don't want to. But this idea that our story has connected us through the ages, and to find our place within the story, and to understand that we do have a place within the story. I mean, that would be something I would love as you're living with this, is that you say to yourself, I have a place in the story. And that in every age, God has called people to make the story beautiful. And in what way is God calling me to make the story beautiful today? Because in many ways, our story, there's a lot of places it doesn't look so beautiful. And in a lot of places, the good news has been anything but the good news. And we need to come to terms with that. And in what ways can I make the story beautiful today? In the ways that that people have served this story, the story has served them, and people have served this story for a very, very long time. It's amazing to me, you spend any time in Europe in any kind of museum. I was just in Spain, in Madrid, like a couple weeks ago, and I was in the Prada, and I never can get over how much art exists in the world in service to the story of Jesus. I was like, what do you do with that? That's amazing. But I also want to say that God has called each of you to serve the story and to make it beautiful. And that's not like a out there thing. That's a right now thing. It's so hand in hand with what the sermon was today. You know? So that's what I want to share. I think maybe somebody has a question, but also you don't have to have any questions. I will try to answer it, but don't ask me specific like dates and stuff like that. Okay.
The most of the iconography, but what is the image in the triptych in the center, actually on the panel on the right, that has like lots of purple and cream lines and crosses and has some, looks a little bit like stained glass rectangle sections, yet top half underneath the orange fish.
In the very top?
Yeah.
That's the very first painting I ever painted.
Oh, okay.
And it was, so that image, artists like create like a visual lexicon. Mm-hmm. You find that over a long time. You have symbols that you use to sort of capture and demonstrate certain things. That painting was painted the year that Sam Shaw was born. That's my only child. And Sam Shaw was the gift that arrived that ultimately gave me permission to be an artist. And so I've always measured my life as an artist against his life on this planet. my professional life. But that painting was, I think it's also the image that's on the back of the church. So looks like a bird cage. There's a bird inside of it, and it was like the question was, why does the caged bird sing? And my response was, the caged bird sings what it's told to sing. And that's the series of painting that I referenced this weekend at Painters Prophets Poets. That my mom said she watched me paint myself out of that cage and into the sky. That's right. Yes.
One of the interesting things to me is that it is 9 different sections. It makes it very dimensional. I always think it's like a cosmic window when I'm just staring at it. When you were developing it, did you develop it just as one painting? Were you aware that it would be one is 3 feet in front of the other? Like, were you aware of where it would go, and how did that influence your process?
Well, the thing that is this kind of like, I don't know, I don't really want to say style, but I don't know what else to say, is there is like a body of work that I have that is sort of like, if you look at my work as a whole, you will see something like this where images are sort of like swirling around together. And I use a transfer process, which I used in this, where I'm like, because that allows me to like capture an image and scale it, repeat it, because I think that's what we do with our own stories. It's like you're recontextualizing it in a way. But I call that kind of like series Everything Belongs. And that's the part that I wanted to read. I didn't plant that question. But I do want to read this because I think if there's like 2 things that I wanted to offer, it's that you're in the story. Let's make the story beautiful. Let's continue to do that. And also this idea of everything belongs. I talked about that this weekend. So Everything Belongs is a title of a book that kind of like rocked my world. And I'll just read this because I wrote it better than I could say it. Everything Belong defines my art practice over the last decade. This painting is the outward visualization of my inner life. For much of my life, I've sought to make sense of what felt like opposing forces shaping me. I've experienced tension in being a Chickasaw woman connected to and led by my ancestors while living in a 21st century Western world. Everything Belongs represents my coming to peace with the fact that all the parts of my life are important. Every story, experience, and person has shaped me. I cannot nor should not wish away certain aspects of my story. There is room for all of them. Everything belongs. And I think that, that has just become a really, really prominent theme in my life. Also, it's just been like that's been the work of my life, is to receive. They have felt like opposing things. And one thing that I've come to realize is that all of our pain in life comes from our resistance. I shouldn't say all, because then that makes you want to argue. Most of our pain in life comes from our resistance. And that tension, and I say tension, I talk about tension a lot because I always feel like I have a foot in 2 worlds. And tension is not something to resolve. It's not something to answer. It's something to receive. And when we can learn to receive the tension, all of a sudden there's some really interesting things that happen. Because scholars tell me that I can't be Native American and also be Christian. So if I can receive that, then all of a sudden I have a voice in a place that there is no voice. Or there are few. Okay.
Not too loud. I got my-
Can you talk about the string that wraps up a lot of the birds?
I can. That's such a good question.
I have a second question after. Is your work on exhibition or on display anywhere in town right
In
now?
town? Yeah. That one I can answer. That's easy. There's some work in Exhibit C has a new space in the Horizons District next to the new Resort Okana, next to the amazing, world-class, game-changing, I'm not even joking, museum, First American Museum. They're changing the game. It's incredible and amazing what they're doing. If you haven't ever been, I'm a docent there. I'd be happy, you email me, I'd be happy to take you on a personal tour through it. But there's a gallery there, Exhibit C, it's brand new work. I hardly know what it's about. What was the other question? Oh, the thread. The thread is definitely a part of my iconography or my personal lexicon. And the thread is how I visualize prayer. I, in my studio, was making these, I was going through a really, like a tremendous season of loss, lots of pain that I could not for the life of me make sense of and understand. And it was awful and pervasive. And I was in my studio, I felt like God was saying, hold the pain in your hands. The pain is going to be a really faithful teacher. Just hold it and don't try to figure it out. Don't try to answer it. So I was like, whatever. So I'm like holding the pain in my hands and it's really hurting for a long time. And so one day I went in the studio and I started making these little balls of string. I had no idea what I was doing. I had these little scraps of paper and I would write these one-word prayers on these little piece of paper, and I started just like wrapping them in string. And I have made hundreds, maybe thousands of these. And it was like this real meditative process. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I was like, that's what my pain felt like. It felt like something that nobody could see. And it was really intimate and tightly wound. And what was it? Well, but God said it was going to teach me. And then, like the way that God does, he tells you to do the exact opposite. And so then he said, I'd like you to just release the pain. Let it go. So it was so interesting because this a lot of these paintings are from that body of work. It's called Seasoned Threads. And the first painting in that body of work is this bird with its upturned wing, and there's 5 paintings of the object. There are objects that exist. These little tiny little, and the balls of string were in the wing of the bird, and the bird was sort of like releasing it. And what happened, and this was so amazing to me, is this just happened in the studio. These balls of string started to unfurl, and these beautiful birds, sorry, it's hitting me again, emerged out of that tender, like desperate pain. This beauty just like showed up on the canvas. And so the ball of string, it is something I still paint it. I mean, almost everything has a ball of string in it because it's sort of just this visualization of that that beauty and pain. They are bound together. And oftentimes the deeper the pain, the more beautiful what comes. I really my life demonstrates that time and time again. And you begin to be able to anticipate that. You begin to be able to anticipate the beauty. Like pain doesn't tank me the way it used to because I'm like, something beautiful's coming. We don't need any more questions. I know if these people have someplace to be.
Okay, I will. I'll end with a comment instead of a question then.
Okay, great.
Thinking ancestral thought myself. Going back to your reading of the dove and the red feet and being from Oklahoma and the connection of the land and the red clay. Mm-hmm. That hit me very strongly when we think about the blood of the martyrs through ancestral land in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And Mado.
Yeah, that's amazing, an amazing observation. This is why you love the audience. It's never occurred to me. How did that never occur to me? That's an amazing, I love that. Thank you very much for sharing that.
One of the one of the lessons at the conference, and you referred to it as you do the art, and sometimes you let it go, and sometimes that art tells you something back that you did not know. Mm-hmm. 10 years on, do you see anything like that here?
think it's the story. It's just like revisiting the story. You know, in the 10 years since I've been gone, my life has completely fallen apart and been remade. And I still have this story. Thank you guys very much. Also, don't forget, art's in your beginnings. So you guys got some work to do. I'll help you though.
Erin, thank you. This is what we hoped for when we wanted you to come, and it was more.
Thank you.
And, you know, my question, if it had been up to me, is, what's about the bird? that's what everybody thinks. I mean, I think the kids going, why is there a bird up there?
Mm-hmm.
And you have shown so much of the depth there and so much more understanding. And now we're not going to see this painting the same way next Sunday, are we? And you've been a blessing to this church with these paintings, and you've been a blessing again, sharing your life, your heart, your pain, and your art. So just thank you. And let's not wait so long for the next time.
Seriously, yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get a tissue. I'm gonna get a tissue since I cried.